Next, let's move on to the Forms tab. On the Forms, in the upper left-hand corner, there will be at least in each new Office key one default template. I have 3 here. If you don't see any of these templates up here, it means that you haven't saved your patient's information on the Patient tab. So make sure you save the information and then you can come back here. Now these templates, what they're for is, let's say a patient comes in and says, I would like a work release or a release from school. Instead of you having to type in the form every time to pull in the patient's name, all you have to do is create the form and then click on it, and it'll automatically populate the patient's information, like the patient's name and also the doctor. And now all I have to do is click on the print button, print this little excuse form out, and then have the doctor sign it. Now the beauty behind this is that this will populate in every patient that I pull up, and with what they call merge fields, it won't pull up the same name when I pull up a different patient. It'll actually pull up that patient's name and also the patient's doctor. For example, in the upper right hand corner where it says select a patient, I'm going to go ahead and type in the last 3 letters of Carrie Heffernan's name, and because she's the only one in the system with the last name that begins with HEF, it pulls up her information, Carrie. So all I have to do is click on the work release, and notice that merge field that had the last name of Due S is now Carrie Heffernan, and then the doctor's name, Bradley Rice. Now we do have a few other forms up here that get a little bit more in depth. For example, like the patient demographics form, which is a form that's really intensive with tons of merge fields, pulling out the patient's address, zip code, things like that. And then also I have the final request. In any case, in order to create these form templates, you'll simply click on the Templates button. This is a screen where you'll go ahead and create your forms. They have 3 different types of forms: the standard, referral, and collections. Now the standard that you have highlighted here is back in the patient demographics on the Forms tab. The referral template is still referring to the patient demographics. As you can see down here, the referral. And we go back to the referrals tab. So when we go ahead and we print, you'll get the referral template that will pull all the information, and then you can print this out, hand it to the patient. They can take that referral over to the doctor that they're being referred to. Pulls in the patient's name, insured's name, all the information. I'll go back to my Forms tab and then click on the templates. And the last one that we'll cover a little bit later on will be the collection forms. But to get started, we can go ahead and create our first form template here. Type in the name. Maybe you want a school release form. And then go ahead and click Save. It'll pull over here, select it, then go ahead and start typing in your letter. Now I get to a point where I want to insert part of the patient's information, like their first name and last name. You'll go over here, and all these folders contain merge fields. For example, I want to pull in the patient's information. Click on the plus sign to expand, and you'll see you have different merge fields. One of them is the first name. If I double click on that, it adds the merge field first name. I'll hit the space bar, double click on the patient's last name. So when I actually pull out the patient, like Carrie Heffernan or Mr. Due, it'll say, please excuse Carrie Heffernan. Now you always want to make sure you have spaces in between the merge fields, because if they're that tight, you'll get errors. So have spaces between the merge fields. Now the last thing is I want to input is the merge field for the doctor's name, because each patient you pull up is going to be tied to potentially a different doctor. So I'll go over here in my right window. Instead of the patient information, I'll click the minus sign to collapse it, and then I'm looking for the provider profile, expand it, and then I can go ahead and say I want the provider's first name, double click. Be sure to click on the space bar so we can add a space between the 2 merge fields, and then double click on last name. Finally, put in some merge dates. I'll click on the expansion and mark in today's date by double clicking on it. So what will happen is that I'll pull in the patient's name, the doctor's name that's tied to the patient, and then today's date. So when my note says please excuse for the next 2 weeks, and then it has today's date, well, then count 2 weeks further out. Be sure to save your work, close out of the screen, and then there's my school release form. So again, if I go ahead and pull up another patient, There's the school release. So I'll pull up in every patient and pull up the exact information according to whatever merge fields I inserted. And then back on the Forms tab, you'll see I have here my school release form. Once I click on it, the merge fields will pull in all the information like the patient's name and the doctor's name. Now, not only is it here in Carrie Heffernan's screen, but again, if I pull up any patient by clicking in this box up at the top, the school release form will be here again, and I click on it and it pulls up Homer Simpson's information.